Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to buy the best whiskey in Australia. That includes how to spot misleading bottles in seconds flat, what every term on the label actually means, and what you should look for to buy genuine, properly aged, and truly high quality Australian whiskey. Plus, I'll show you the specific products at Dan Murphy's, BWS, and First Choice that are actually worth your money. All in 3 simple steps. Welcome to the Aussie Isle. Hit subscribe and drop a comment telling us what you look for in your whiskey. We read every single one. Step 1. Know the red flags. Let's start with the products you need to walk straight past. The Australian Made Deception. If you've got a bottle in your cabinet right now that cost under $55 and claims to be Australian whiskey, I need you to go check where it was actually distilled. Because what you might find isn't what you expect. Many bottles labelled Australian whiskey contain significant amounts of imported Scotch or other foreign spirit blended with local product. The ACCC guidelines allow product of Australia only if the goods are substantially transformed here. But Australian made has a broader interpretation. Think about that. You're paying craft Australian prices for something that might be majority imported spirit. That's not supporting local distillers. That's your money walking out the door. Here are your red flags. Bottles that don't name a specific distillery anywhere on the label. Language like blended in Australia or crafted in Australia instead of distilled in Australia. And prices that seem too good to be true. Genuine craft Australian whiskey typically starts at $80 or more for 700 millilitres. Anything dramatically cheaper than that, check the fine print immediately. The age statement problem. Here's something most buyers don't realise. Unlike Scotch whisky, which legally must be aged at least 3 years under the Scotch whisky regulations, of 2009, Australian whisky has no federally mandated minimum age. Some bottles contain whisky aged mere months, marketed right alongside genuinely aged expressions at similar prices. So when you see oak matured on that $90 bottle, how long do you think it's actually been in the barrel? Could be 3 years, could be 3 months. The label won't tell you. Watch for the distinction between matured and aged. Look for missing age statements on premium priced bottles. And be suspicious of finished in claims that might disguise a very young base spirit. Marketing terms that mean absolutely nothing. Now, Food Standards Australia New Zealand, known as FSANZ, does not regulate quality descriptors on spirits. They've published guidance, but these terms have no legal definition whatsoever. Small batch, meaningless. Handcrafted, meaningless. Premium, reserve, select. Craft distilled, traditional methods. None of these are regulated for whiskey in Australia. So when you see a bottle covered in words like Master Distiller's Reserve, small batch, traditional craft, understand that's packaging poetry. It tells you nothing about what's actually in the glass. The price warning sign. Here's your baseline. Australian Distillers Association members typically price 700 milliliter bottles from $85 to $150 or more for standard expressions. Starward Nova from Melbourne usually runs $70 to $85 at Dan Murphy's. That represents the value end of genuine Australian craft. If something claims similar provenance at dramatically lower prices, that's your signal to investigate. Compare Tasmanian craft expressions at $95 to $120 against suspicious $45 Australian bottles. The maths doesn't work unless something's different about what's inside. Step 2. Decode the label. Now you know what to avoid. But what should you actually look for? Let me decode those labels for you. Distillery transparency. This is your single most important indicator. A bottle should tell you exactly where the spirit was distilled. Not just bottled, not just blended, distilled. Look for a specific distillery name on the front label. Sullivan's Cove, Lark, Starwood, Archie Rose. These are distilleries staking their reputation on every bottle. Look for distillery location. Tasmania, Victoria, New South Wales. And pay attention to the distinction between distilled and bottled by versus just bottled by. Green flags worth seeking. Single distillery sourcing clearly stated. Distillery contact information or website you can verify. Batch numbers that can be traced back to specific production runs. Let me give you the Australian distillery regions worth knowing. Tasmania produces Sullivan's Cove, Lark, Overeem, Heliers Road, and Nant. The climate there is similar to Scotland with established international reputation. Victoria has Starwood, Gospel, Bakery Hill, and Korowa. They're known for innovative approaches and wine cask influence. New South Wales offers Archie Rose in Sydney and Manly Spirits. Western Australia has Whippersnapper and Limeburners. South Australia has Adelaide Hills Distillery. Production indicators that actually matter. Understanding what production terms indicate about quality separates informed buyers from everyone else. Mash bill disclosure tells you the grain composition. Malted barley, wheat, rye, corn. 100% malted barley indicates single malt style. Transparency about grain sourcing matters too. Is it Australian grain or imported? Cask information reveals the maturation story. Look for type of oak, American, French, or Australian. Previous contents matter enormously. Ex-bourbon, ex-sherry, ex-wine. First fill versus refill makes a difference. More flavour extraction comes from first fill casks. And if you see finished in, that means secondary maturation. Make sure you can find the primary cask. Information 2. Distillation method tells you about the spirit's character. Pot still versus column still. Pot still typically delivers more flavour complexity. Column still is more efficient, but often less characterful. Double distilled versus triple distilled affects the final profile. Here's what separates a $90 bottle from a $150 bottle with similar age. The conversation between spirit and wood. First fill ex-Apera casks from Australian fortified wine? That's flavour development you can't fake. Certifications and designations worth your attention. Let's cut through the noise. There are credentials that actually indicate something versus pure marketing. Australian Distillers Association membership matters. It's a voluntary industry body with production standards. Member distilleries commit to transparency guidelines. Not a guarantee, but a positive signal about the producer's intentions. Awards worth noting include the World Whiskies Awards for credible international recognition. The San Francisco World Spirits Competition is well respected. The Australian Distilled Spirits Awards matters for local context. A medal in a specific category means the whiskey was evaluated blind by qualified judges. But here's the thing, a 2019 gold medal on a 2025 bottle? That's not the same whiskey. Check when the award was won and whether it was for that specific expression. Relevance diminishes over time. Geographic and climate signals matter for Australian whiskey because of our unique environment. The Tasmanian advantage comes from cool climate creating slower maturation and more complexity development. Clean water sources provide similar advantages to the Scottish Highlands. Sullivan's Cove's international recognition established Tasmanian credibility on the world stage. Mainland innovation works differently. Warmer climate means faster maturation. The Angel's share is higher, but flavour extraction happens more quickly. Starwood's Melbourne approach works with the climate rather than against it. Australian wine cask integration using Apera, Tawny, and Shiraz casks creates a uniquely Australian signature you won't find anywhere else. What terroir means for whiskey includes local barley varieties like Franklin barley in Tasmania. Water source characteristics affect the final spirit. Climate influence on cask interaction shapes everything about the maturation. Now you can read a bottle like an industry insider. Let's build your actual shopping list. Step 3. Usage guide and shopping list. You know what to avoid and what to look for. Now let's talk about how to store it properly, bust some drinking myths, and show you exactly what to put in your trolley. Storage rules that actually matter. Your whiskey belongs upright, not on its side like wine. Cork contact with high alcohol spirit degrades the cork over time. Store away from direct sunlight. UV light degrades flavour. Compounds. Consistent temperature matters more than cold temperature. Room temperature is fine. Consistency is what counts. Once opened, oxidation begins. Consume within 1 to 2 years for optimal flavour. Here's something most people don't consider. Below half-full bottles deteriorate faster because of more oxygen contact. Consider decanting to smaller bottles if you're a slow drinker. That expensive bottle you're saving for a special occasion? If it's been open and half empty for 2 years, that special occasion has passed. Drink it or preserve it properly. The drinking and serving truth. Here's how to actually experience what you're paying for. Neat at room temperature reveals the full character of the whiskey. A single ice cube or a few drops of water opens aromatics on cask strength expressions. Cask strength typically runs 55 to 65% ABV. These benefit from water addition. That's not a sign of weakness. Glassware matters. A Glencairn or tulip-shaped glass concentrates the aromatics toward your nose. Adding water to good whiskey isn't sacrilege, it's science. Water releases flavour compounds trapped in alcohol. Master distillers taste with water. You can too. Your Australian shopping list. Here's what to actually buy. I verified these prices for January 2026. Entry level under $80 for 700 millilitres at Dan Murphy's or BWS. Starward Nova runs about $75 to $85 at Dan Murphy's. Melbourne Distilled. Australian wine barrels. Genuinely Australian through and through. Red wine cask maturation gives it an approachable style. Legitimate craft at an accessible price point. Archie Rose White Rye comes in around $75 to $80. Sydney Distilled with complete transparency in production. Not traditional aged whiskey, but genuine Australian distillate. A good entry point to Australian craft distilling. Hellier's Road Original runs about $65 to $75. Tasmanian Distillery with an established operation. Peated and unpeated expressions available. Solid introduction to Tasmanian style. Mid-range from $80 to $120. Starward Fortis runs about $100 to $110. Higher proof expression of Starward style. More intensity than Nova with the same quality distillation. La Classic Cask comes in at $100 to $115. Tasmanian Pioneer, established in 1992. Single malt with a traditional approach. This is the benchmark Tasmanian expression. Corowa Single Malt runs about $85 to $100. New South Wales Distillery with wine region influence. Australian oak experimentation gives it genuine craft character with regional personality. Bakery Hill Classic Malt costs around $90 to $105. Melbourne-based and operating since 1999. Traditional Scottish style approach in an Australian context. Premium from $120 to $200. Sullivan's Cove American Oak runs about $150 to $180. World's Best Single Malt winner at the 2014 World Whiskies Awards. Tasmanian benchmark with limited production. Worth the price for the experience. Sullivan's Cove French Oak costs about $180 to $220. Even more limited with higher complexity. Collector level quality. Lark Symphony No. 1 runs about $160 to $190. Blended single malt expression that showcases the range of Lark's cask program. Overeem Sherry Cask comes in at $150 to $170. Small Tasmanian producer with exceptional sherry influence. What to avoid entirely. Any bottle that won't name its distillery. Australian whiskey priced under $50 without clear provenance. Products listing only blended in Australia or crafted in Australia. Bottles with no batch, lot, or production information. Brands with no distillery website or production transparency. Where to buy. Dan Murphy's and BWS through Endeavour Group offer the widest mainstream selection with membership discounts available. First choice, Liquor Through Coles, has a comparable range with Flybuys integration. Nick's Wine Merchants carries premium and allocated releases with specialist knowledge. The Whisky List online has harder to find expressions, and buying direct from distillery websites often gets you exclusive releases while supporting producers directly. For online purchases, check shipping costs, which can add $10 to $15. Consider temperature during summer transit, and verify you're buying from an authentic retailer. Which one of these surprised you most? Drop your experience in the comments. I want to know what Australian whiskey you've tried that deserves more recognition. And if you want to watch a video like this one, click the video on the screen. Thanks for watching.